The loudest person in the room looks strong, until you notice everyone watching the one who says nothing. Silence doesn't weaken presence, it magnifies it. In a world where noise is constant and everyone is eager to be heard, it feels almost unnatural to believe that silence could hold more weight than words. Yet that is the paradox. The loudest voice in the room often seems to have control, but the one who speaks the least is the one people end up watching, wondering, and respecting. Silence, when chosen deliberately, carries an authority that noise never can. It is not a gap, it is a statement. And the person who understands this paradox holds a form of power that others struggle to explain but cannot deny. Most people are trained to think that power belongs to those who take up the most space, who dominate conversations, who never let a pause linger. We are told from a young age to speak up, to defend ourselves, to make our presence known with words. But here is the truth: the more someone talks, the more they reveal. Their emotions leak through their tone. Their insecurities show in the way they justify themselves. Their desire to be liked becomes obvious in their need to be understood. The quiet person, on the other hand, hides all of this, and what is hidden becomes intriguing, even intimidating. People do not fear what they understand, they fear what they cannot read. When someone chooses silence, it unsettles those around them. Human nature hates gaps. People rush to fill the empty space with their own explanations, often saying too much, often exposing what they meant to keep hidden. The quiet person does not need to push, does not need to fight, because others will end up showing their own weaknesses in the silence. This is why silence is not weakness, it is control. The one who is silent is not without power. They are directing the tempo of the entire room without moving a muscle. Think of the times you have been in a meeting or a gathering where someone stayed silent while others argued, explained, and defended themselves. At first, you may have wondered why they said nothing. But as the noise grew louder, you probably found your attention drifting toward the one who did not join in. You wondered what they were thinking, whether they knew something others did not, whether their calm meant strength. That is the paradox. The silence makes their presence larger, while the words of others shrink them. Silence also makes every word more valuable when it finally comes. The person who rarely speaks holds the power to make the room fall quiet when they do. Their voice is not another drop in an endless stream, it is the stone that breaks the surface. People lean in, they listen, because they know this is not someone who wastes words. This is not someone who speaks to be liked, but someone who speaks to be understood only when it matters. The paradox of silence is simple but brutal. Those who think noise equals power exhaust themselves proving their worth, while the quiet one lets mystery do the work for them. And in a world where perception shapes reality, the person who can stay silent when everyone else is desperate to be heard will always hold the most control. Noise has always been mistaken for strength. The person who talks the most, who fills every pause, who always has something to say, is often seen as the leader of the room. People assume that confidence is loud, that authority must be spoken, that respect is earned by overpowering others with words. But this is only an illusion. The truth is that volume rarely equals authority. In fact, the louder someone becomes, the more they reveal about themselves. And the more they reveal, the more they lose control. Most people believe that constant talking shows confidence, but it often shows the opposite. The one who cannot sit in silence, the one who must always explain, defend, or share an opinion, is usually the one who fears being overlooked. They are terrified that if they do not speak, they will disappear, and so they fill every gap with words. Yet in doing so, they expose their emotions, their insecurities, their need to be validated. Every sentence becomes a small window into their inner fears, and the more they speak, the easier it becomes to see through them. The illusion of noise is powerful because society rewards it. We cheer for the bold voice, the confident speaker, the one who appears fearless in front of a crowd. But appearances can be deceptive. Many of the loudest people in the room are not strong. They are defensive. They use noise to mask doubt. They use volume to keep others from questioning them. They know that silence would reveal too much, so they run from it. Silence works differently. Silence hides. And what is hidden is always feared more than what is exposed. When a person stays quiet, no one can read their thoughts. No one knows what they agree with or what they reject. No one can measure their emotions, their confidence, or their doubts. They remain unpredictable, and unpredictability is always a form of power. People respect what they cannot predict because it forces them to be cautious. It makes them second-guess themselves. It makes them careful with their words. The one who stays silent gains something the noisy person can never have. They gain mystery, and mystery is stronger than explanation. The noisy person explains everything until they become transparent. The quiet person explains nothing, and in doing so they appear more powerful than they may actually be. Because in the minds of others, silence is not emptiness, it is potential. It is the possibility that the quiet one knows more, feels more, understands more. That possibility is often more frightening than the truth. Noise creates exposure, silence creates imagination. And imagination, once it begins, is always larger, darker, and heavier than reality. This is why the quiet person holds more weight than the one who speaks endlessly. The loud person shows all their cards, the quiet one forces everyone else to guess. And in the game of power, the one who forces others to guess is always in control. True power has little to do with the amount of words spoken, and everything to do with the impact a person leaves behind when they say nothing at all. The strongest presence in any room does not belong to the one who dominates every conversation, who interrupts, who fills the air with endless explanations. It belongs to the one who can sit still, calm and composed, while others scramble to be noticed. The quiet person shifts the energy without effort, because people cannot help but notice what is not being said. Silence, when held with confidence, creates a weight that words alone can never match. When someone speaks too often, their voice becomes predictable. People begin to expect their interruptions, their long defenses, their constant need to clarify. But when someone holds their words, when they use them rarely, every glance, every pause, every subtle movement becomes amplified. The room leans toward them not because of what they say, but because of what they might say. Presence is not about volume. It is about tension. It is the feeling that everyone senses but no one can explain. The feeling that the quiet person carries something the others do not. Stillness becomes a weapon because it makes people question themselves. In a world where most are addicted to noise, a person who refuses to be rushed unnerves everyone around them. Imagine a heated debate where tempers flare, voices rise, and accusations fly. Yet one person remains unmoved. They don't flinch. They don't react. They don't even raise their tone. The silence becomes louder than the shouting. People turn their eyes to the one who has not joined the chaos, and suddenly the power shifts. It is no longer the loudest voice that controls the room, but the one who held back. Presence over words works because humans are wired to fill in gaps. When someone speaks little, people begin to project meaning onto their silence. They assume wisdom, they assume strength, they assume control. Even if none of these things are entirely true, the perception alone creates influence. And influence is not about facts, it is about what others believe. The quiet person does not need to prove themselves because others will do the work of elevating them. The mystery created by their silence builds an aura that words could never build. This is why some of the most respected leaders, thinkers, and figures in history were not the ones who shouted the loudest, but the ones who mastered presence. They understood that words can be argued with, but silence cannot. Silence leaves no target, no weakness, no opportunity for attack. It is untouchable. And in that untouchability, power grows. The truth is that stillness is not emptiness, it is strategy. When you resist the urge to speak, you gain control over not just yourself, but everyone watching you. They begin to second-guess their own emotions, their own words, their own confidence. You do nothing, yet you accomplish everything. That is the paradox of presence, and that is why the quiet one often holds the most power. Silence has a strange way of making people uncomfortable. Most cannot stand it. They feel the need to fill it, to explain, to justify, to say something even if it adds no value. This is why silence is one of the most effective tools of power, because it does not require effort, yet it forces others to act in ways that expose themselves. The quiet person does not have to argue, does not have to defend, does not even have to push back. They simply wait, And in that waiting, the other person begins to unravel. When someone makes a claim, delivers an insult, or throws out an accusation, the natural instinct is to respond. Most people rush to defend themselves, eager to protect their image. But the one who remains still, who says nothing, places all the pressure back on the speaker. Suddenly, the silence becomes a mirror. The attacker begins to wonder if they said too much, if they revealed too much, if they made a fool of themselves. They look for validation in the room, but instead they are met with quiet, and that quiet makes them nervous. They start talking more, and with every new word their credibility weakens. This is the beauty of silence. It forces confession. It pulls more from people than they ever intended to give. In the absence of resistance, they keep talking, trying to strengthen their point, but instead they expose their insecurities. They over-explain, and in doing so, they lose the aura of control they hoped to project. The quiet person has not done anything, yet they look stronger simply because they did not get pulled into the noise. You can see this play out in meetings, debates, even casual conversations. Someone tries to dominate the discussion. They go on, and at first it seems impressive. But when no one interrupts them, when no one fights back, the confidence starts to crack. Their voice shifts, their words repeat, their message weakens. By the time they stop, the room is not impressed. The room is exhausted. And when the quiet one finally speaks a single calm sentence, it lands with 10 times the weight of everything that came before it. Silence also works, because people reveal what they fear when they cannot stand stillness. They talk to convince themselves as much as they talk to convince others. They reveal doubts, worries, and insecurities without realizing it. They hand over information that the quiet one can use later, information that would have remained hidden if the silence had not drawn it out. The power of silence is that it makes the other person carry all the weight. They destroy their own credibility while you preserve yours. They become emotional while you remain calm. They look unstable while you look untouchable. And when the dust settles, people do not remember the noise. They remember the one who never needed to explain. Silence forces confession, and confession destroys authority. That is why the one who speaks less often walks away with more power. Control is often imagined as force, as someone pushing harder than everyone else, speaking louder, moving faster, dominating through energy. But real control, the kind that lasts and commands respect, does not look like effort at all. It looks like calm. It looks like silence. It looks like the ability to stay still when others are restless. Silence is not passive. It is active control, because the one who does not react ends up controlling the pace of everyone else. In any conversation, there is a rhythm. People speak, they interrupt, they raise their voices, they try to claim attention. The one who stays quiet, who does not rush, who does not try to force their presence, immediately stands apart. They do not move with the current. They set their own current. Others feel this, even if they cannot explain it. When a quiet person finally chooses to speak, the room slows down. The tempo is no longer wild or scattered. It is pulled into their timing. This is what makes silence so powerful. It takes the chaos of a room and reshapes it without resistance. The mistake many make is to confuse silence with weakness, as if saying nothing means you have nothing to offer. But silence is often the choice of those who know they do not need to prove themselves. They know that words are only valuable when they are rare, when they are placed with intention. The quiet person does not waste language, so when they finally use it, it lands heavier. People lean forward. They listen more carefully because they know this is not someone who speaks out of habit. They are deliberate, and deliberation always feels like authority. Think of a leader in a heated room. Everyone is shouting ideas, arguing over details, trying to show how much they know. The leader says nothing. They observe. They wait. They allow the noise to run out of energy. And then, when the time is right, they deliver one short statement. That single statement decides the direction of the room. Not because it was long, not because it was loud, but because it carried the weight of silence behind it. The quiet gave it strength. Control without effort works because people expect reaction. They want you to defend, to clarify, to rush in and match their energy. When you refuse to do so, they begin to lose their footing. They realize they are the only ones scrambling. You, in contrast, look centered, collected, unshaken. And in human psychology, the one who looks least affected is always seen as the one in control. The real secret is that silence allows you to guide without resistance. You are not pushing others, you are letting them push themselves until they lose balance. Then, with one calm word or gesture, you set the direction. People remember it because it stood against the noise. That is why the quiet person, who says less but carries more, often ends up leading the room. Their power does not come from effort. It comes from the discipline to stay still when everyone else is moving. Silence has a way of reflecting people back to themselves. When someone does not reveal what they think or feel, the people around them begin to guess. They start creating stories, filling in the blanks with their own fears, hopes, or judgments. This is the mirror effect, where the quiet person does not have to say who they are, because others will decide it for them. And the irony is those assumptions are usually larger and stronger than anything the quiet person could have said out loud. When someone speaks often, there is no room for mystery. Their words expose their personality, their emotions, and their weaknesses. People know what to expect. They can measure them. They can predict their reactions. But when someone stays silent, they leave a void, and the human mind cannot stand a void. Cannot. People rush to fill it. They start projecting their own ideas onto the quiet person. Some see wisdom, thinking silence must mean intelligence. Others see danger, believing silence must hide strength or strategy. Some see arrogance, assuming quietness is superiority. But no matter what they project, the quiet person becomes larger than life in their imagination. Unreadability creates power, because people respect and fear what they cannot easily understand. If someone cannot be read, they cannot be controlled. They cannot be manipulated, because there is no obvious path into their emotions. This uncertainty makes others cautious. They hold back their words, they second-guess their jokes, they measure themselves against the quiet person without realizing it. All of this happens without the quiet person needing to do a single thing. Their silence becomes a mirror that exposes everyone else's inner world while keeping their own hidden. You can see this in any group setting. A quiet person enters a room, sits calmly and speaks little. Within minutes, people begin to wonder about them. Who are they? What are they thinking? Why are they so calm when everyone else is trying so hard to be heard? The questions create tension, and tension is power. Because the more people wonder about you, the more you dominate their thoughts. The talkative ones fade into the background, while the quiet one stands out, not for what they did, but for what they refused to do. The mirror effect also reveals insecurity in others. Someone who feels threatened by silence often reacts by talking more, by trying harder, by over-explaining. They project their own doubts onto the quiet person, making themselves look unsteady. The silent one has done nothing but watch, yet they end up in control because their stillness turned the spotlight away from themselves and onto everyone else. This is why silence is so often mistaken for wisdom. It is not always wisdom, but it does not matter. Perception creates reality. If people think you are wise, they treat you as wise. If they think you are dangerous, they treat you with caution. If they think you are mysterious, they treat you with curiosity and respect. By staying unreadable, you let others decide your image, and most of the time, they overestimate you. That overestimation is power you did not have to fight for, only power you allowed to form in their minds. Conflict has a way of revealing who truly holds power. Most people believe it is the one who argues the hardest, the one who raises their voice, the one who never backs down. But when you look closely, you see the opposite. The person who stays quiet, who refuses to be dragged into noise, always ends up with the advantage. Silence in conflict is not weakness, it is strategy. It exposes the other person, it shifts the attention, and it makes the quiet one untouchable. When someone attacks you, whether with words, accusations, or insults, their goal is to make you react. They want to pull you into their frame, to make you play the game on their terms. The moment you respond defensively, you validate them. You show that they hit a nerve, and even if your words are clever, you have already lost because you proved you could be moved. The quiet one does not give them this satisfaction. By staying calm, they force the attacker to keep swinging into empty air. And the more the attacker swings without hitting anything, the weaker they begin to look. The louder someone becomes in conflict, the more emotional they appear. Their words start to tremble, their energy turns frantic, and the crowd begins to sense desperation. Meanwhile, the quiet one holds stillness like armor. They do not flinch, they do not rush to defend, they do not meet noise with noise. This creates a contrast so sharp that it flips the perception of the entire room. The attacker may have the words, but the quiet one has the presence. And presence always outweighs noise. Imagine being in a meeting where someone calls you out, questioning your decisions in front of everyone. Most people would panic, rushing to explain, to justify, to prove they were right. But the quiet person pauses, breathes, maybe even smiles faintly without saying much at all. That pause becomes heavy. The room feels it. Suddenly the accuser looks anxious, trying to fill the silence, repeating themselves, explaining too much. Without a single word, the quiet one has made the attacker look unstable. And when they finally choose to respond, it is short, precise, and final. A single sentence that cuts deeper than all the noise that came before it. In personal relationships, silence during conflict is just as powerful. When emotions run high, people often say things they regret, things they cannot take back. But the one who chooses silence never loses ground. They let the storm rage while they remain steady, and in time the storm burns itself out. The loud one feels guilty, exposed, and often ends up apologizing for their outburst. The quiet one never needed to fight, because by not reacting they already won. Silence in conflict works because it changes the stage. The accuser becomes the performer, desperate for validation, while the quiet one becomes the judge, calm and unmoved. People always side with the one who looks most in control, not the one who makes the most noise. And that is why the quiet person walks away untouchable, their silence louder than any defense could ever be. Absence has a power that words can never match. When someone chooses not to reply, not to explain, not even to show up in the way others expect, they begin to take on a presence that grows larger than if they had defended themselves. This is because the human mind cannot stand unanswered questions. When there is no reply, people create their own explanations, and those explanations often make the quiet one appear stronger, wiser, and more dangerous than they really are. Turning absence into aura is one of the highest forms of control because it makes others do the work of building your image while you remain untouched. Think about how people react when a message goes unanswered. They replay their own words. They question whether they said too much. They begin to imagine what the silence means. Is it anger? Is it disappointment? Is it calm superiority? The quiet person does not need to confirm or deny because the uncertainty itself becomes the weapon. The absence forces others to fill in the blanks, and in filling them, they often exaggerate. They give the quiet person more depth, more strength, more mystery than any defense could have created. In public life, this works even more strongly. A person who is constantly explaining themselves becomes predictable. They shrink their image by revealing every thought, by making sure everyone knows where they stand. The one who refuses to play that game, who lets accusations and gossip hang in the air without response, builds an aura that feels untouchable. People whisper about them, speculate about them, argue about them, but the one thing they all agree on is that they cannot be moved, and the longer the absence lasts, the bigger the presence grows. Absence also exposes the weakness of others. Those who try to attack or provoke a silent person end up revealing themselves instead. They keep pressing, they keep talking, they try harder and harder to get a reaction. But the more they do this, the more desperate they look. The quiet person never needed to win the argument because their refusal to join it made their opponent collapse under their own noise. In the eyes of everyone else, the quiet one did not lose. They elevated themselves by stepping above the fight. This is the paradox of absence. The less you do, the more people imagine you have. The less you explain, the more they believe you know. The less you show, the more they project onto you. In time, this creates an aura that cannot be built with words, because words always limit perception, while absence allows imagination to expand it endlessly. The truth is that absence is not retreat, it is control. By not responding, by not defending, by not giving in to noise, the quiet person shifts the burden onto others. They carry the weight of confusion, while the silent one carries nothing. And as days pass, the silence grows heavier, until it becomes presence itself. That is how absence turns into aura, and aura is the purest form of power. There comes a point when silence is no longer just a tool you use, but a state you live in. It stops being a tactic that you pull out in moments of conflict and becomes an aura that surrounds you everywhere you go. This is the untouchable state, the level where you no longer feel the need to prove yourself, defend your choices, or explain your every move. You carry yourself with a stillness that people notice before you ever speak, and that stillness is what commands respect. The untouchable state is not about shutting people out. It is about mastering your presence. When you no longer rush to explain, people stop seeing you as someone they can put on trial. They realize that no amount of provocation will move you, no insult will pull a reaction out of you, no accusation will drag you down into defense. This is when respect turns into something deeper, a quiet fear mixed with admiration, because people know they cannot control someone who does not need validation. Most people spend their lives reacting. They are triggered by criticism, shaken by gossip, and desperate to be understood. Every word they speak in defense gives away another piece of their power. The one who has reached the untouchable state has no such weakness. They have trained themselves to see every attempt to provoke as proof of their strength, because the more others try, the more they reveal their own desperation. The untouchable one stands firm, and in doing so, they rise above the noise. This state creates a shift in how people view you. Instead of being someone they can argue with, you become someone they hesitate to challenge. Instead of being someone they can provoke, you become someone they must approach with caution. Even your silence begins to feel like a decision, as if every lack of reaction carries a meaning they cannot quite grasp. The mystery of what you might be thinking, the uncertainty of what you might do, becomes more powerful than any explanation you could give. What makes the untouchable state so rare is that it cannot be faked. You cannot pretend to be above the noise if you are secretly craving approval. You cannot fake stillness if your emotions are boiling beneath the surface. It comes only when you have fully detached from the need to convince, when you no longer care if people misunderstand you, when you accept that your presence alone is enough. At that point you are free, because no one can use your reputation against you. No one can bait you into weakness. No one can drag you into their frame. In the end, power does not belong to the one who argues the best or explains the most. It belongs to the one who cannot be touched by the noise around them. The untouchable state is not loud, it is quiet. It is not reactive, it is calm. It is not defensive, it is certain. And once you reach it, you no longer chase respect, because respect is already yours. People understand one simple truth. If they cannot provoke you, they cannot control you. Maybe this video helped you see yourself or someone you know in a different way. Feel free to let us know via a like or in the comments. And if you want more wisdom and guidance in becoming a better version of yourself, subscribe now. This is the moment to start becoming the person you really want to be.